when you go up there to the big boys, Paul Kearnsey, them MAME boys, you don't want none. You understand me, boys?
Well, Thaler shows her saying, my main job now is communicating science, but she also admits she can't read a scientific paper to save her life. You would think this would be a problem for a research scientist and science communicator, but Thaler solves it by saying there's no such thing as the scientific method. And we're going to just stop there. I'm going to show you Michelle Thaler. This is the beautiful Michelle Thaler. Sure, she's beautiful, personality and all that. See, you give people a bit of fame, stick her in front of a camera, say you're going to be our spokesperson, and they'll tell you anything. It's like so-called newsreaders. They're not journalists anymore. They just read from teleprompters. That's all they do. Does she really believe in all this? I don't know. Is she a Freemason? Definitely. Does she know what's really going on? I don't think so. She's just a useful idiot. She probably doesn't even realise that she's lying. She probably truly believes what the main narrative is in space and all the rubbish that goes with it. Okay? So just quickly back there. Oh yeah, and scientific method. This is what we're going to go to. Let's have a look at the scientific... What did she say there? Hold on, sorry. Thaler solves it by saying there's no such thing as the scientific method. Okay, there's no such thing as the scientific method, okay? Well, in Wikipedia there's a scientific method. And lots of it, and history. So I'm going to read you this main portion here and the history section, just to show you that she hasn't got a clue what she's talking about. Quote, the scientific method is an empirical method for acquiring knowledge that has characterised the development of science since at least the 17th century, with notable practitioners in previous centuries. See the article History of Scientific Method for additional detail. It involves careful observation, applying rigorous scepticism about what is observed, given that cognitive assumptions can distort, or cognitive dissonance, can distort how one interprets the observation. It involves formulating hypotheses via induction based on such observations, the testability of hypothesis, experimental and the measurement-based statistical testing of deductions drawn from the hypothesis and refinement or elimination of the hypothesis based on the experimental findings. These are principles of the scientific method, as distinguished from a definitive series of steps applicable to all scientific enterprises. And she says that the scientific method doesn't exist. Yeah, because it doesn't fit her narrative. Although procedures vary from one field of inquiry to another, the underlying process is frequently the same from one field to another. So from astrophysics, astrobiology, all this crap, none of it adheres to the scientific method. You've heard me say all this many times. Now we're actually looking at it. The process in the scientific method involves making conjectures, hypothetical explanations, deriving predictions from the hypothesis as logical consequences, and then carrying out experiments or empirical observations based on those predictions. A hypothesis is a conjecture based on knowledge obtained while seeking the answers to the question. The hypothesis might be very specific, or it might be a broad. Scientists then test hypotheses by conducting experiments or studies. A scientific hypothesis must be falsifiable, implying that it is possible to identify a possible outcome of an experiment or observation that conflicts with predictions deduced from the hypothesis. Otherwise, the hypothesis cannot be meaningfully tested. The purpose of an experiment is to determine whether observations agree with or conflict with the expectations deduced from a hypothesis. Experiments can take place anywhere from a garage to a remote mountaintop to CERN's Large Hadron Collider. There are difficulties in a formulaic statement of method, however. Though the scientific method is often presented as a fixed sequence of steps, it represents rather a set of general principles. Not all steps take place in very scientific inquiry, nor to the same degree, and they are not always in the same order. History. Important debates in the history of science concern skepticism that anything can be known for sure. As such, views of Francisco Sanchez, rationalism, especially as advocated by René Descartes. Inductivism, empiricism, as argued by Francis Bacon, then rising to particular prominence with Isaac Newton and his followers, and hypothetico-deductivism, which came to the fore in the early 19th century. The term scientific method emerged in the 19th century when a significant institutional development of science was taking place, and terminologies establishing clear boundaries between science and non-science, such as scientific and pseudoscience, appeared. Throughout the 1830s and 1850s, at which time Buchananism was popular, naturalists like William Whitewell, John Herschel, John Stuart Mill engaged in debates over induction and facts, and were focused on how to generate knowledge. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a debate over realism versus anti-realism was conducted as powerful scientific theories extended beyond the realm of the observable. Okay, so it exists. So that is a load of rubbish. She's only saying that because what she's spouting is, and we'll come to it. Carrying on, this grossly unscientific approach to science gives NASA license to say whatever they want without bothering to back it up with any proof whatsoever. So that's exactly what Thaler does. She opens her mouth and what comes out is truly bizarre. Well, no, it's not actually truly bizarre because it's this. Pseudoscience. It doesn't adhere to the scientific method. It's pseudoscience. And what is pseudoscience? From Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a system of theories, assumptions and methods erroneously regarded as scientific. And this is what people have fell for. Follow the science, follow the science. There's only one, there is no science, there's only a method. It's the scientific method. Anybody tells you any claptrap about stars in space, say, what, have they actually been, have we been out there to measure them? Have they been observed by eyesight instead of found through S waves and P waves, like they're trying to find the core of the Earth and all these other planets they say they keep finding? It's all made up. It's all pseudoscience. Okay, so back to this article. And this one gets me. This is the final one. She says here, there's no such thing as life, really, she says. Thaler declares in the same video, we're very complicated rocks. We're a chemical reaction that got complex enough to become conscious. But in Thaler's case, evidently not quite conscious enough. That tells me that this woman is a Satanist. Because she's basically saying that she doesn't recognise the divine spark of the Creator within us at all. That spark that makes us divine. And I feel sorry for her, in a way. It's pathetic, really, that negative little world that she lives in. A bit like my mate Pete on his 60th birthday when I went round to his house and we were getting drunk and he said, we're nothing. That's basically what she's saying. She's saying the same thing. And I pity them for thinking that way. So let's move on to the article. NASA doesn't want us to know God. When I put it all together, it seems clear NASA is intent on taking God out of the picture. They don't want us to believe we were created in the image of God, and they don't want us to believe the Earth was created specifically for our habitation. Maurice Klein, the 20th century mathematician, recognised the motive behind NASA's grand-scale deception. The heliocentric theory, wrote Klein, by putting the sun at the centre of the universe, made man appear to be just one of a possible host of wanderers drifting through a cold sky. It seemed less likely that he was born to live gloriously and to attain paradise upon his death. Less likely, too, was that he was the object of God's ministrations. We all are. Some people might say the reason NASA doesn't want us to believe in a divine creator is because they don't believe in a creator themselves. No, they know he exists. However, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm quite certain the people running the show at NASA know God is real. Of course they do. Then they know, but they don't want anyone else to know. If they were atheists, they wouldn't work so hard trying to hide God. But they aren't atheists. They are something far more sinister. Yes, and we're going to come on to that. Next paragraph. NASA lies begin with its beginnings. In order to understand why NASA lies about everything, we need to go back to the beginning of the United States space program, to a top-secret project called Operation Paperclip. Although few Americans are aware of what took place, the shocking reality is nearly 500 Nazi scientists were all occultists as well. were recruited by the US government towards the end of World War II. Well, also the Russians and the British took in scientists as well, but they just kept it secret. When they immigrated, many were given positions in what would later become NASA. So let's have a look at Operation Paperclip. So here they are. So they've gone from wearing Nazi uniforms to wearing shirts, ties and nice suits. That's the only difference. And there is Werner von Braun just there. Inside Operation Paperclip, America's secret program that employed 1,600 Nazi scientists in its labs. During Operation Paperclip, the records of premier German scientists were expunged so that they could secretly work in American labs to give the US a leg up over the Soviets in the Cold War. In the immediate wake of World War II, the Allies were widely venerated for their role in ending the reign of the Third Reich. But the Allied powers also made controversial decisions in secret that were kept classified for decades. Perhaps their most contentious action was the creation of Operation Paperclip, a covert intelligence project that brought over 1,600 Nazi scientists to the United States for research. At the end of the war, the Allies scrambled to collect German intelligence and technology that may otherwise fall into the hands of the Soviet Union, because the Nazis back then were in contact with other civilizations beyond the 360-degree ice wall. That's why I had a base site in New Schwabenland, in Antarctica. They were in cahoots with another civilization who was giving them technology. That's why they wanted it. And technology that may otherwise fall into the hands of the Soviet Union. As an impending Cold War threatened to destroy the hard-won peace, the United States granted a slew of Nazi scientists immunity for their war crimes so that they could work in the labs instead of in Russian ones. Though these scientists were responsible for such milestones as Apollo 11's... No, they didn't. Well, that's a load of rubbish for a start, but hey, they worked on it. Was America justified in its decision to pardon war criminals in exchange for a political advantage? So let's just go down the Rosenberg list and the depth of Nazi research. To show you some images. Kurt H.D. was a former V-2 rocket scientist who became a Nazi director between US President John F. Kennedy and US Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson. So that's him, this guy in the centre here. President Truman signing the Atomic Energy Act in 1946. Meanwhile, 1,600 Nazi scientists were being recruited into the US. And it says here, I've just saw it here, they had no idea that Hitler had created this whole arsenal of nerve agents, explained Jacobson. They had no idea that Hitler was working on a bubonic plague weapon. That is really where Paperclip began, which was suddenly the Pentagon realising, wait a minute, we need these weapons for ourselves. In 1945, as the Allies began to reclaim territory across Europe, they also began confiscating German intelligence and technology for themselves, like they did with the scientist, what's his name, the free energy scientist, Tesla. That's what they did with them. And it was President Trump's uncle that got his hands on the technology. Then in March of that year, a Polish lab technician discovered pieces of the Rosenberg list hastily stuffed into a Bonn University toilet and delivered it to US intelligence. Establishing Operation Paperclip. At first, the United States was concerned merely with the capturing and interrogating the scientists identified on the Rosenberg list in a mission called Operation Overcast. But as the United States discovered the extent of Nazi technology, this plan rapidly changed. Instead, the states would collect and recruit these men as well as their families to continue their research for the American government. And so, on May 22nd, 1945, troops invaded Peenemünde and captured the men who were hard at work on their V-2 rocket, which was the worst first long-range guided ballistic missile. There it is there. I'm going to take you down to this bit here. The Nazi scientist behind the project, we're going to look at him. Among the scientists that were recruited under Operation Paperclip was premier German rocket scientist Werner von Braun, who also forced prisoners of the Buchenwald concentration camp to work on his rocket program. Many of them died from overwork or starvation, yet Braun would go on to become the director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. When they were running low of good technicians, Werner von Braun himself travelled nearby to the Buchenwald concentration camp, where he handpicked slaves to work for them, added Jacobson. We're going to do it. In the wake of Project Pep, we'll finish on this. Much of Operation Paperclip's history remains unknown, but the most up-to-date and informative work on the subject is Anne Jacobson's book, 2014 book. Throughout the latter part of the last century, journalists have attempted to uncover more about Operation Paperclip, but their requests for documentation were often met with lawsuits. When a few requests were finally honoured, countless documents were missing. Of course, it would be all redacted. Many of the German researchers whose Holocaust-related atrocities were simply expunged by the J-10A later went on to work on MK Ultra, a top-secret program backed by the CIA, whose main objective was to generate a mind-control drug to use against the Russians. And Cathy O'Brien, in her book Transformation of America, Trance, T-R-A-N-C-E, where she was an MK Ultra sex slave, and was passed around from George Bush Sr. through to Dick Cheney, through to the Clintons, Hillary Clinton more so than Bill. It's all in a book. So that's enough of Operation. There's a photo here, we'll leave it on. NASA scientist turned NASA director Kurt A. Dubus gives French President Georges Pompidou a tour of Space Kennedy Center in 1970. So that's that. So we'll move on, but we'll get back to this article. One of the key figures in Operation Paperclip, a rocket scientist named Werner von Braun, was tasked with the development of rocket technology. While von Braun was working to launch our fake space program, Walt Disney went on to work on the public, trying to sell us on the idea of space travel. I remember it well. And here's the two of them together, Walt Disney and Werner von Braun, both Freemasons. I think Disney was a démolé as a kid as well. Here they are again, years later. So here's all the different examples of these two working together. So moving on. As a child, I grew up watching The Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday evenings, either before or after the feature movie. Mr. Disney himself would appear on screen talking to the viewing audience. He'd be standing next to a desk with a globe of the fake ball Earth, and he'd hold up models of rockets and talk to us about going into space. At the time, I thought Walt Disney was just a nice man who made fun movies for kids. I had no idea he was part of a massive deception, and that half a century later, I would discover I had been lied to my entire life. Well, join the club. Join the club. So, and also, in 1997, when I went to Disney World, I had this eerie feeling. There was a horrible energy there. It just felt wrong. We were staying in a villa outside in Kissimmee, but every time I went in there, just gave me the shudders. And God knows, and there's caves and all sorts underneath that place, you know. I dread to think what they're really getting up to there. So anyway, let's move on. Okay, swallowing the truth pill. The truth pill is hard to swallow, but here's what I've learned about Walt Disney and about C. Fred Kleineck, the head of NASA at the time of the Apollo missions, and about the first astronauts. They were all Freemasons. In fact, over the course of NASA's history, the number of astronauts involved in Freemasonry is astonishing and no mere coincidence. And let's have a look at the Freemasons and the astronauts, because they all are. Colonel Edward Eugene Buzz Aldrin, and I'm not going to go through it all, but it should tell you at the bottom what lodge they are. Initiated at Oak Park Lodge, number 864, Montgomery, Alabama, on the February 17th, 1955. Passed to Fellowcraft on April the 12th, 1955. Raised at Lawrence N. Greenleaf Lodge, number 169 in Denver, Colorado, on February the 21st, 1956. York Rite degrees, Waco, Texas, May 1967. Member of the Arabia Shrine Temple, Houston. He was quite high up, and that's why he was chosen to fake the moon landings. Colonel Leroy Gordo Cooper, member of Carbondale Lodge number 82 in Carbondale, Colorado. Honorary 33rd degree by the Scottish Rite. Can't get much higher than that. Colonel Don F. Easel. Easel was a member of Luther B. Turner Lodge number 732 in Columbus, Ohio. Colonel John Herschel, Glenn Jr. Glenn went on to, once again, Glenn returned to space, the space shuttle. Where's when he gets put in? Glenn was the first American. No, I don't want that. I want to know what lodge he was in. Glenn belongs to Concord Lodge 688, New Concord, Ohio, and Demolay International, same as Walt Disney. Lieutenant Colonel Virgil Gus Grissom, who got killed, hanging a lemon on the lander. Grissom was a member of Mitchell Lodge number 228, Mitchell, Indiana. Colonel James Benson, Jim Irwin. Irwin belonged to Trajan Lodge number 104 in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Captain Edgar Dean Ed Mitchell. Where was that? Mitchell is a member of Artesia Lodge number 28, Artesia, New Mexico. Captain Walter Marty Wally Shearer Jr. was also a member of the Canaveral Lodge number 339. So Cape Canaveral's got its own Masonic Lodge there. Number 339 in Cocoa Beach, Florida. Lieutenant Thomas Patton Tom Stafford. Stafford belongs to Western Star Lodge number 138, Weatherford, Oklahoma. Captain Paul Joseph Weiss. Weiss is a member of Lawrence Lodge number 708 in Erie, Pennsylvania. And there the all together, it goes on and on and on and on, guys. You don't become a prime minister or a president of any Western country unless you're a Freemason. You just won't get up there. They control everything. And they are the conduits between their satanic masters and this world. All the shit that's going on right now, they're behind it. Because they are only doing as they've been told. They're slaves as well. But they think they're going to be on the winning side. Little do they know, eh? Silly, silly little men. And their egos, eh? That'll be the downfall at the end of the day. We always win. God will win in the end. He'll just brush him off his shoulder like lint, a little fly. So, let's move back to the main article. If you think Freemasons are merely a fraternal organisation, you might not see the problem. I suspect most lower-level Masons see it as nothing more than a social club. Yeah, which is what they do. But the thing is, when they know you can trust you, then they'll rise you up. They'll bring you up. If they trust you. But just like the rest of us, they are being deceived. In reality, a Freemason has a very evil agenda. High-level Freemasons are enemies of humanity and enemies of God. The reason I say this is because the God they serve is none other than Lucifer himself, whom they also call Baphomet. Absolutely. If you find this hard to believe, or you think the Freemasons within NASA keep their satanic practices to themselves, all you need to do is look at the evidence. That's what we're going to look at. NASA's satanic symbols and rituals. Quote, all NASA mission patches contain occult symbols, and their alleged space missions are steeped in satanic ritual. According to William Cooper, who's dead now, another revelation of those who understand the symbolic language of the Illuminati is the hidden meaning of the names of the space shuttles, and we'll come back to that in a minute, but we're going to move on to this. These are the mission patches from all the missions that they've done over the years, okay? See that one there with the pentagram in it? Here's one here. NROC, Reconnaissance Operation. A wizard. What's this? I don't know what. Space. I don't know what. I can't read that. Let me get my glasses on quick, see if I can read it. Unified Space Vault. Okay. Whatever that is. A wizard. A spaceship and an ET. Another wizard there. This one's interesting. There's the globe with a lizard. A reptilian, and I think that this reptilian species is real, and they have a lot to do with what goes off in here. And that's their way of showing you that they've created this false ball, and they're in charge. Pan, there's paganism there, occult. That's the phoenix, another occult symbol coming out of the flames. You've got the pyramid with the eye on it there, and you've got another pyramid with an eye in it there. And let's just have a look at a few more. Let's read these here. The Star Alliance, incidentally, is an anagram of H.A.R.P, Satan. Here is Wolfgang Mayruber of Lufthansa, a key cult leader, brandishing a space-age pitchfork. Old-fashioned pitchfork image provided for comparison. So that's supposed to be a pitchfork. Oh, and this is Satanic Aerospace Conspiracy Scrapbook, and it's from the Flat Earth Society. It's actually quite a good article. Don't join the Flat Earth Society, by the way. They're just there to misguide you. But it's interesting the research he's done in this article. And there's Lockheed Martin, and there's the pentagram in there as well. Star Alliance aren't the only ones with a flashy pentagram in their logo. Acting like a beacon for other satanic investors and business partners, I guess Lockheed's old logo wasn't quite obvious enough, so when they merged and became Lockheed Martin in 1995, they kept the pentagram but added a little note about their Dark Lord underneath. for those who can't read it, it says we never forget who we're working for. Yeah, it says it right there, we never forget who we're working for. And there's a pentagram there, look, but they don't show all of it. Interesting. Lockheed was responsible for launching the Hubble Space Telescope as well as Millstar, an $800 million pseudo-light. Also GPS, which conveniently happened to be operated by the so-called Masters of Space. Here's some Lockheed skullduggery which went on back in the 1970s, just to give you an idea of what upstanding folks this organisation employs. Lockheed Martin was planning to merge with Northrop Grumman a few years back, but they couldn't in the end because it would reveal the defence industry to be the single homogeneous orgy of devil worship and space fakery that it is. They have to maintain the illusion of being competing companies. Northrop Grumman happened to be the parent company for an old friend of ours. For those who don't know, Scale Composites are the company pretending to build Richard Branson's spaceship. He's definitely an insider and a Satanist, for sure. He's got his own island. There's only one reason why he's got an own island, because he doesn't want people to know what he's getting up to. He stayed in a big house about 20 miles away from here, at Loch Hearn, in a big country house, with Justin Bieber apparently. Here's another one for you. There must have been a satanic ritual going on there or something like that. So, carrying on. Northrop Grumman was recently discovered to have been swindling the government by overcharging for their space parts. This is basically the conspiracy business model. All they do is this. All the time, I guess in this particular instance, they couldn't figure out a way to murder Bagley quietly enough, so they just shrugged it off and paid back $111 million. Let's take you down to the main patches here. Right, here we go, this one here. I didn't really dig up much on NORAD yet, but here's their logo. This is a NORAD logo. The classic ritual dagger of Satanism overlays a massive picture of the round Earth. Coincidence? Maybe. The jury's still out on NORAD at the time of this writing. The current Space Wing commander basically has to be aware of the conspiracy. He is responsible for all Department of Defense satellites. But does that necessarily mean that NORAD is part of the organisation? Were other NORAD high-ups knowingly involved in the round Earth conspiracy? Of course they were. Well, I don't know yet, but anyway, the 50th Space Wing Masters of Space are ultimately... there's some satanic conspiracy imagery on their signature which may not be immediately obvious. So we've got it here. And this is the Soviet-Russian space program as well, with the same chevron. Which one's that? That Russian. That is IRNSS is the name of the Indian Space Research Program.